Let's talk a little bit of Neil Young and Crazy Horse. We've been tracking this new record, Colorado, and we have some more details and a first single. We'll take a sneak peek listen to that right now here on The Morning Show with Anthony. It's a follow-up to their 2012 release, Psychedelic Pill. We know that it'll be in stores via Reprise Records on October 25th. I'm very, very excited for that. The boys in the band have put out their first single. It's called Milky Way. Couple things to note before we take a listen to this. The album was captured live in a studio high up in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, hence the title. Young and John Hanlon produced the record. Mastering was done by Chris Bellman at Bernie Grunman Mastering in Hollywood. Now, usually when an album is recorded live, you really can't tell all that much. You could immediately tell in the first 3 seconds of listening to Milky Way, because if you've ever been in a room, a recording studio or a concert hall, or even just hanging in your buddy's basement, and he's got, drums and pianos and guitars all out there, you know that as soon as you start to play something through an amp, a guitar, the snare drum will rattle. So we don't really hear this much because when recordings are done properly in studio, the drums are recorded separate, or they're in a different room, or they're recorded at a different time, whatever the case may be. They pull all that stuff out of the room that they don't want to hear on the album. When you're at a concert hall, the snare drum does rattle, but everything else is so loud that you can't really hear it. And the drums are mic'd in such a way you can't really hear some of that stuff. You can hear it within the first 3 seconds of this new single, Milky Way, that the guys have. You could immediately hear snare drum rattling in the background. And it's kind of fascinating, and I'm not pointing it out or picking on it, that it's like crummy, but it is definitely intentional. It is definitely intentional. Like, this could have been taken out. They could have mic'd the drums differently. They could have put even just a glass barrier in front of the drum kit. They could have put the drum kit in another room. They could have done a whole bunch of different things, and they absolutely chose not to. So the vibe I get from at least this first single, and I don't know if the rest of the record's going to reflect this, is a couple of pals in the studio hanging out, hit record, and whatever comes out, comes out. You'll notice, too, on Neil's vocals that he's not really mic'd all that well. You can tell this is a live setting. I think some people are going to hate it. I think some people are going to actually find it to be quite refreshing, because you don't get these imperfections on most albums these days. Can you hear that? You hear that little, it's like almost a hissing, but it follows all the guitar string plucks. Take a listen again. I'm going to turn this up real loud so you guys can hear it. You hear that? That's the snare. That's the snare drum showing up in the recording. I'm kind of flabbergasted because I haven't heard that in a professional recording in a really, really long time. In a really long time. You can still hear it.
She was looking like a friend of mine the first time I saw her face. I was approaching at the end of the line the first time I ever saw her smile at me that way. I was sailing in the Milky Way, losing track of memories that weren't that day.
So you kind of hear it. He was off mic at one point when he came back on.
As the stars flew by, I did collide with memories.
Milky Way is a 6-minute track. Let me fast forward a little bit to what I think is the hook. I'm not entirely sure.
I was sailing in the Milky Way, losing track of memories that weren't that day, right by her side. As the stars flew by, I did collide with memory, but somehow I survived and became free.
So there's Milky Way from the forthcoming record, Colorado, October 25th release. The album will, of course, be on a high-resolution release from Neil Young's archive website, which through that we can actually see the track listing in advance. It'll also come pressed on a 3-sided double vinyl, which will include a 7-inch single with the first ever performance of Rainbow of Colors and studio B-side Truth Kills. The track listing is Think of Me, She Showed Me Love, Olden Days, Help Me Lose My Mind, Green is Blue, Shut It Down. 7th track is Milky Way, which you just heard there, Eternity, Rainbow of Colors, the studio version, and I Do. We talked about Neil Young a whole bunch recently. We'll throw out a link to that discussion from the Morning Show with Anthony vlog of him opting not to follow this record up with a tour, but instead release a documentary called Mountaintop Sessions, which will chronicle the making of the album. Now, that is going to come out in theaters, in over 100 theaters, so a wide release, not really wide, but pretty wide release, the same week that Colorado debuts in October. So whatever that week is of of October 25th, which I'm assuming is a Friday, that's when we're going to get Mountaintop Sessions, which will chronicle the making of that record. So we talked about that, how that was a huge shift from the world, your old school analog world into the new digital world. I can't fit in a tour. I have a whole bunch of other projects I want to do, but I can still reach my audience with something. I can still give them something. And that something in this particular case is the documentary of the making of this record, which I think is kind of cool. And he's got a whole bunch of other film projects going on right now, Neil Young, which is the other reason why he couldn't really tour. But we saw the same thing with Bruce Springsteen. Bruce put out that solo record, Western Stars. Not going to really tour behind that, but I can still give my fans something. So now we are, awaiting this concert film of him performing that album in its entirety in this barn that he has in the Midwest somewhere. And we can get excited about that. So, again, does it replace seeing Neil Young and Bruce Springsteen live? No, absolutely not. It doesn't. But it's also really cool that, in this era of digital content being so easily accessible and profitable, frankly, at this point, these artists can do that and still reach us, maybe more so than ever. Because the other option here, because you can complain, well, you should just go on tour. The other option is here, nothing. They could have done nothing, but at least now we're getting something, which I'm really appreciative of. So, cool stuff from Neil Young. As soon as I heard that drum noise, I'm like, I got to hear the rest of this album. I got to hear, and now I want to see the documentary too, because again, you're always so used to like such polishing and mastering being done at Bernie Grundman mastering in Hollywood. Like, what did they do there? What did they do if they didn't take out the drum sound? I left it all in there. It's crazy to me. Could be genius though. Could be genius in a world of drum tracks and perfection and playing along to the click in studio. Could be genius. And Neil sounds pretty good next to, he's got this knack of arranging his voice with harmony. He did it in CSNY. He's doing it here with Crazy Horse in 2019. Cool stuff from Neil Young. Excited to hear the rest of the record. Can't wait to check it out on the archive site, which is unbelievably cool.